Yeah.
You guys are live, Dr. Sherry.
Thanks.
Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Osborne. We're going to just give a quick second here to let everybody check in. I know that, guess what, we're running on time. It's exactly 6:30, and what we're finding is that this might be the first time Dr. Sherry and I have been running on time. What do you think, Dr. Sherry?
It has to be the first time. I can't imagine it happening before.
All right. Well, just click in. Let us know that you're here. Say hi. Let us know where you're coming in from. And I think one of the big things is that as we go through this process, Dr. Sherry and I have been talking about this, is that, we've been working over the last month and a half with this whole coronavirus thing. We've gotten a lot of questions. And so we've been kind of compiling them and over that time and really kind of putting them together. And that's really what tonight is about. So.
Yep, I know we got a long list of questions, so we're taking some live as well, correct? People type in.
Yeah. So as you get questions, make sure that you let us know. And I think the other thing is that, look, if you're on Facebook, set up as a watch party, just share it with people, because I think in a time like this, nobody knows what truth is, right? Nobody knows what's real, what's not, and I think that's what our goal tonight is. I will tell you one thing that Dr. Sherry and I commit in this process is that if we don't know something, we're going to tell you. But if we don't know something, we will tell you what we do know. But we're not going to give you opinions. We're just going to base everything that we're talking tonight about facts and truth there, because I think it's in this time of what do they call it, relative truth. It creates a lot of confusion, and confusion creates anxiety and stress. And I don't know if you guys give me a thumbs up if that's kind of what you're feeling right now, is a little bit of anxiety and stress there. So.
Yeah, and it seems like the stats, the numbers are constantly changing on this thing, back and forth. So, the target's a little slippery here. So, I mean, even up till just today, I think Dr. Osborne and I were both still pounding through research and different articles. And, things change quickly. The news is reporting different things on different channels. So hopefully today we can give you guys some good basic numbers and some good ideas, some real good basic things to do just in health in general, I think, as well.
Yep. All right. Well, I say what do you say we get started, Dr. Sherry?
I say we do it.
All right. So welcome to the Corona Q&A. And I think it's really kind of an interesting thing, because all of a sudden, for the first time in history, health has been the number one focus on everybody's mind there. And I always think that perspective is really important. So if I was to say we're going to talk about the real global health scare, the one that would make viruses look silly right now, is that 1 in 3 kids are going to become diabetic. And then people are like, well, I don't really think it's going to be my kids. Well, statistically, if you have 3 kids right now and they were born after 2000, one of them will become a diabetic there. And that seems like it's just a blood sugar thing. But diabetes is not an infection. It's something that you don't catch like the flu. It's from how we live, our food, our life, and the toxic load and the stresses that we have. And some people say it must be genetic. Well, I don't think it is genetic. Because we look at the diabetes, diabesity and the heart disease and all these other factors. And we know that diabetes has a link with cancer, and we know that there's a lot of issues with insulin. And so what I want you to have perspective is that diabetes sets us up for a shorter life. Diabetes sets us up for more chronic disease, but also diabetes sets us up for and we'll talk about this later, is one of the things that make us much more susceptible to the coronavirus itself.
Yep. One of the things too that's super important, I think, is when you look at how the brain works in general. Our brain is always driven towards fear, and it served us really well. Way back before newspapers and articles. Sitting around the fire, if someone was to tell you they saw an alligator, you would be driven towards learning about alligators. You're scared of alligators. And so it's kind of a survival mechanism that we go to whatever the negative energy is for the day. Once the newspapers came along, media, the TV, fear really sells, and our brains go to fear. And I think when I look at what's happening now, my number one fear is what's going to come from this, as far as I see children being scared of other people and scared of their own environments. And I want to encourage you guys to try to stay away from the fear. There's a really good researcher who talked about whenever he teaches about this, he tells people, don't be super scared of the stuff you see on TV, because most of that's very, very rare, which is why it's in the news. Be more scared of the things that are actually going to affect you. You know, the number one killer is obesity and cardiovascular disease. And, you know, some of these real big stress disorder diseases that really get the majority of us, you know, when you look at the numbers on some of these viruses, they're actually pretty low as far as percentage of people who are going to get this. You know, there's a lot of things like Dr. Osborne mentioned, they're going to get the majority of us that we should really be focused on. But it's hard to turn your brain off. I mean, I turn the TV on and I see the fear, and it's hard to not focus on the fear or the negative stuff. Again, I think it's a big reflex that most researchers talk about in that regard. So I would encourage you to try not to be focused on that if you can as we go through this.
Well, and let me see if I can make this work here. Now we're going to see if all of our plans actually work here, Dr. Sherry. There we go. So I just want to start this off, and I just found this kind of interesting. You know, we're all looking for the vaccine, and if you've been in the news or following it, you know, Dr. Richard Pan, he's the big vaccine proponent that made vaccines mandatory. And if that's our plan, what he really just posted and says, even after a year-long lockdown, even a year-long lockdown makes economic sense. And so his whole feeling is that, yeah, we should just lock this whole country down for a year. And that's the very best that they have right now. And I think what we have to do, like I said, it's all about perspective, because fear sells, but it's really the fear of the unknown there. And so when we start looking at this in perspective, you know, just between October and April of this year, and these are just relatively, you know, new stats, they're a couple days old, but, you know, there was between 39 and 56,000 flu deaths in the United States. And in fact, there's been 62 times as many flu illnesses than the coronavirus is there. In fact, and I think that means that's 6,200% more people actually died from the flu than did the coronavirus, than had the coronavirus there. So I think that we just have to keep that in perspective. You know, many times we can have, you know, 500,000 to 600,000 people a year dying from the flu, and nobody shut down the economy for that. It's the fear of the unknown. And so I think one of the challenges, like Dr. Shear and I were talking about, it's the consistency of the news. And we really wanted to take this from a slightly different spin for most of us, because there's what's something called an ANT, which stands for an autonomic negative thought. And an automatic negative thought is basically what we're having right now. We're constantly thinking about the different, you know, the different issues that are going on, so we're going to go through the top 10 automatic. I need to get adjusted. Automatic negative thoughts that we're having really right here. And I think that one of the things is we got to figure out what an autonomic. Wow, I talk nervous system all the time.
Not right now, you're not.
Really, during a pandemic, you know, our mental hygiene is just as important as washing our hands. And so I think in this unprecedented time, you know, with the spread of the coronavirus, and it's all really led to a whole bunch of unhealthy thinking patterns, and it's really assaulted our brain function. And so we're going to really start talking about disinfecting our thoughts, killing the automatic negative thoughts that are coming on. And I think most of us are having those. And so we're going to go through a process to teach you how to kill those automatic negative thoughts. And so that you can start to become in control. And so there's when you're looking at this automatic negative thought, there's 4 things that you really have to ask yourself. Number 1, is it true, right? So is something true? Like what you're reading, what you're hearing, what your neighbor's saying, is it true? And then the second question you ask is, can I absolutely know it's true? The next one is that how do I react when I have that thought? And the last one is who would I be if I had another thought, right? How would I feel? And so what we need, most of the time, we don't even know it's true. And then we create all these feelings within ourselves, all this stress, all this anxiety. And I'm seeing anxiety at epidemic proportions in the office that I've never seen before. Any thoughts, Dr. Sherry?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really concerned. This is the big one. I think, you know, when you take human beings who are social by nature, and we all have these fears that are just natural, you know, I mean, the first one is going to be, you know, am I going to die? That's the big question a lot of people are panicking about. And, you know, Dr. Osborne and I were talking not too long ago, you know, we basically have 2 brains. We have an emotional brain and we have a logic brain. And we get what we call emotional hijack. It happens all the time. When you fall in love, your brain gets emotionally hijacked. You know, you do things that your logic brain is crying out, don't do, but you might do because you're emotionally hijacked. Fear is like a big one. It'll hijack your brain emotionally, making you do things that you never really logically would have done. And I'm really nervous as we go through these 10 different things that are automatic, that, the number one, am I going to die? That one alone is the number one fear that people will go crazy for and do all kinds of illogical things in response to it. When, what we're going to encourage you to do is, as you go through these fearful times, as you see these things on the media that really scare you, try to take a step back, try to let your logic brain get involved. Jump in and look at some of the real numbers. What are the real odds that I'm going to die? The answer are, they're actually really, really slim. What are the odds that I'm actually going to get this thing? The odds are pretty slim. Now, when you hear people say that doesn't mean like, oh, you shouldn't be concerned and you shouldn't take good actions and things. But should you let your brain run on you, and should you do absolutely emotionally crazy things in response to it? I don't think you should. I think your logic brain needs to step in, take control as you watch the news media, and sit down logically and say, what's really happening? What are the real odds of stuff really happening in my life? And as we get a better grip on these numbers, as the numbers are changing every day, you're starting to see the numbers are actually pretty small on this thing. Again, not downplaying the whole situation, but using some common sense and some logic on it. So when you look at the number one, like, am I going to die? The first thing you want to ask yourself, like, okay, is it true? And really the answer is, well, kind of unlikely that that's actually going to happen if you look. Do I absolutely know that that's true is the next question you want to ask yourself. And the answer is no. The vast majority of people recover from this virus. According to the CDC, even at the 85 group and older, the 85-year-olds, the death rate is in the 10 to 25%. Now, that's high, but still 75% of the people who are getting better. So keep those in number. Keep that in mind as you go through that, And then the next question you always ask is, how do I react when I think that thought? And again, I want you to realize your emotional brain is going to drive you. Fear is a big driver. And so you start thinking, am I going to die? Is it rational? What's it going to do to change my life? You ask yourself, what would it be like if I was able to turn that off and live life without it? A couple of days ago, I was looking at the news and it got me kind of up in arms, and I was starting to panic. And so I literally spent 2 days where I just turned it off and didn't want to look at it for a while. And I got to be honest, I felt a lot better, not stuffing my head and all. I was reading information and stuff, but not watching the dramatic fear mongering, if you will, that the media works. And I think everyone knows the media makes a lot of money on fear, not happy things. Rarely do they tell stories of, a happily married couple with a happily son at the park, living happy. That doesn't sell. So when you look at this first one, am I going to die? Look at it rationally for us.
Yeah, and what I did is I put together some things that I think are really important to keep things in perspective there. Am I going to die? Well, literally, what we have to really reframe that is when we look at who is dying, is that almost 95% of people that actually passed away from the coronavirus, they actually had other health problems. So what we have to remember is that you have healthy people, and then you have unhealthy people, and then you have sick people. So a lot of times people are saying, I feel good, but it doesn't mean that they're healthy. In fact, when they start looking at the 5,700 cases in New York, when they first started studying them, half of them, over 53%, had high blood pressure, 40% had obesity, 30% had diabetes, 20% of them were morbidly obese, 10% of them had coronary artery disease. And so when you really look at these numbers, you have to remember that of the people that were dying, 88% of them had one issue. More than one issue there. And so I think, in a lot of our classes, we always talk about, insulin resistance. That's the one thing a lot of these things have in common. And so what does that look like? Well, when you have you've heard us talk about high vitamin, having vitamin D. Well, when you have high insulin or high blood sugar, it drives your vitamin D levels down. So when, and what vitamin D does is it mediates the whole your immune system. So when that's driven down, it depends on the person's health factors. But literally, when they find that when people have low vitamin D and high insulin, people are much more likely to pass away and have inflammation and have depression. And so, taking vitamin D is not it's a Band-Aid right now for some of these people that have these high risk factors. But I really do think that realizing that the people that are dying are actually have to be sick first. And so there's always that one person, well, he was healthy. Well, we don't know what his lifestyle looked like. We don't know what he did when nobody else was watching. We don't know, what like, was he vaping? Was he not? Like, we make an assumption just because they look good or they feel good that they're actually healthy. And we know that, half the people that have a heart attack, their very first symptom of feeling bad is actually heart pain there. And so we look at cancer. My dad was diagnosed with cancer. He didn't feel bad until about, like 6 weeks before he died. And so just remember that it's, people say that these people are healthy, but the statistics show that almost 90% of the people had more than one health problem. And probably the other 10% didn't even know that they actually had a health problem there to begin with there. All right. So go ahead, Dr. Sherry.
The thing is, when I see that, it's kind of a different mindset for me. You always see people who don't live a healthy life, and someone who maybe is going to smoke, and you go, well, they're probably going to get lung cancer. That's what the stats say, and that might be what causes their death eventually. And I think what you're seeing now is really how lifestyle comes in, right? I mean, these people if you live a lifestyle where you're going to be obese and not exercise and not do those things, your body's going to be very prone to other health conditions that might end up getting you. And these infections are the big ones. So I think it's a really interesting lesson for all of us to realize that, eating healthy, exercising, staying healthy in general is not just going to be preventing cardiovascular disease and those things, the long-term chronic diseases, but these viruses that sneak up on us, if you're in an unhealthy environment, they're going to come and pick after you because you have these, what we call comorbidities. You're going to be more at risk, or the terrain, if you will, is not going to be very good, and these things are going to jump and take you. So it's kind of a different mindset I think people can learn from.
Yeah, I was actually listening to Dr. David Katz the other day, and he read an interesting op-ed piece in the New York Post. And what he said is, because we're doing the sheltering in place, what we're doing is we're just saving the deaths for later. Like, those people that we're trying to protect, eventually they're going to have to get out into the population, and many of the people that were actually dying, it could have been a day, a week, a month, 3 months that they would have already passed because they were already at risk there. And so I'm not trying to minimize the amount of stress, and every life matters. Every person's important. But what I want us to make sure is that we keep our mind straight, and that we focus on the between 1 and 54. It's less than 1% of people that that will actually die from this if they actually catch it in the first place there. Okay, so this is the second question is are my loved ones going to die? And is it true? Look, there's a difference between possibility and probability. The probability is no. Okay, there is a possibility, but we can't know that that's going to happen. Do we absolutely know this is true? Again, the statistics from the CDC show that most people who become infected with it, they recover from it. Okay, you just have to know that the most people that get infected, they recover, and the healthier that we are, the more likely we are to recover. So, and if you practice social isolation, yeah, you reduce the risk of exposing yourself and family to the virus, but just remember, I want us to reframe that. It's not social isolation. It's actually physical separation. We don't need to isolate ourselves socially from people, because that's actually way more destructive. But, this is not a time that you go lick the handrails and, put your hands on the, on an escalator and wipe your face, right? I mean, we have to be safe and sane about that. But at the same time, I do think, a lot of times people react with that they're terrified, and that they're letting their problem is you're letting your children see that you're panicked, and it makes them feel panicky too. And so what we want to do is we don't want to be panicked. We want to have a plan. And so maybe if we could change our thoughts that, hey, look, I want to be a better role model for my children, and to be able to focus on what we can do to help them stay healthy during this time. It's what we call the automatic negative thoughts. They actually create disempowering, and we want to create empowering actions rather than disempowering actions right now.
Yeah, and on that note, I was just talking about the logic versus emotional brain. Children's brains are still very immature, and so they're going to follow our lead, and it's magnified for them. They don't have the background that we have as mature adults. They haven't seen the things that we've seen. They haven't seen necessarily the rise and fall of bad times. If things come that are bad, we see the end result. 9/11 was really, really bad. But we've all lived through it. We saw how it came back, and things kind of went back. Children don't see that. So we got to be really careful around the kids, I think, as far as, don't install all this crazy fear. Try to think logic brain, explain it to them in a logical way that, yes, there's a risk, but we need to, if we practice safe things, we're going to be okay through this.
Yeah. And I think if you saw the video that we did on Stockdale syndrome, we want to help them understand that we're going to make it through this and we're going to come out better in the long run. But a lot of times people are like, well, we have all this time that we're spending with our family. That's almost like a marriage encounter, right? People go to a marriage encounter, they come back from the marriage encounter, and they're like, why is it so hard when we're back from the marriage encounter? It's because you stop doing the things that actually you learned at the marriage encounter. So use this time to say, this is how I'm going to live moving forward. And so if you say, I'm going to wait till I get healthy, I'm going to wait till I exercise, I'm going to wait to do all those things, once again, you're putting yourself in a disempowered place. We want to empower our kids. We want to empower our spouses. We want to empower the people that are around us. And somebody's got to rise up. It might as well be you to be the leader in your household there. All right, Dr. Sherry, number 3.
So number 3, the question is, are we going to be financially ruined and we're going to lose our house? Listen, this is a real fear. And the answer to this, when you say, is it true? And the answer, honestly, is maybe. We don't know for sure. I kind of doubt it. I think things are going to rally back. A lot of people talk about the stock market. And I think, again, if you look at over the history of the stock market, things tend to rally back. But that's a realistic one. So when you ask yourself, how do I react? How do I react when I think that? And I think we all know we go to a fearful spot. We start panicking. And I think, you don't even, on some of these questions when you ask, I think the majority of people are asking these questions. When you think, are we going to be financially ruined? When you look at 26 million people who are unemployed right now, I can guarantee you there are millions and millions of people. This country has 350 million people. And I would say easily the majority of people are asking this question right now. And it's a big deal. And it's very, very scary when you see that question coming across. The answer is, I doubt it. I think we're going to be okay. We're going to suffer a little bit here. But you got, again, I want you to ask yourself, how do I react when I feel that way? If you go into a panic mode and let the emotional brain kidnap you and you start doing all kinds of crazy things, for instance, if you go out and buy $10,000 of toilet paper, that probably isn't a logical brain thing to do. It's more of an emotional brain thing. But the big question, again, when we look at these is, how do I respond if I don't have that thought? If I don't respond with fear? You respond in a logical way, which is, most likely I'm going to be fine. I might move stuff around in the right spot, but most likely I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to take it day by day instead of panicking. Real quick, back on the children one of the things that, if you look at the stats on this virus, it's very interesting as far as children aren't really getting hurt by this. In fact, I think anything below 19 years old, I believe I've only read there was one death, and this, I think it was a 14-year-old boy who had comorbidities who passed away from this. So it's extremely rare. So when you see these young children with the mask and the goggles and the gear, and they're all wrapped up and they're fearful of even getting close to anybody, I think that's creating an unnecessary fear, especially for children, at least from what we know now. And again, I'm not saying don't be safe with them, but I see fear in these kids. And I really think we need to kind of evaluate how we're approaching this thing with these children.
All right. So number 4. One. Let me do number 4. I'm stuck at home and I don't like my family, right? That's we're actually spending more time many times with our family. And if you're feeling it, it's probably true, right? You don't like what the seeds that you've sown over the last 10, 12 years, right? Can I absolutely know it's true? Look, you probably have had problems with your family members in the past, and it doesn't mean that they're destined to always have problems there. And so how do I react when I'm having that thought? And this is a lot of times I'm hearing this is that, I'm trapped, I'm victimized, like I'm in the zombie apocalypse and my families are, they're walking around trying to eat my brain. And it really wants me to just hide in my room, which makes me feel even more isolated there. So what if we had a different thought, and that maybe that you don't like your family, it's just we're focusing on all the things about our family that drives us crazy. And so what if we started just looking for what we like about our family rather than what we don't like about our family? And I suggest you'll find yourself massively relieved and freer. You'd be more open to come to common ground with your family, and so that we could all help each other get through this. And a lot of times when we're in survival, when we're under stress, what we try to do is we become focused on self. And when we're focused on self, what we start to do is we start to isolate and we start to find problems on the horizon. That's really, if you're walking through a dark alley and you hear a sound, you start focusing on all the bad things, not the good things. Just on a side note, on the question that we just had before, the question was that when we're struggling financially and ruin, what we find also is that all anxiety comes from thinking about something that's going to happen in the future. We have no control over the future there. And what I want us to remind us is that many times the things that we're anxious about really never come to pass. And so, like, waiting for something to come to pass, you need to start, if you're feeling anxious, start working on where you want to be in a month, 5 months, 6 months, 10 years from now. You might not have and control the things that you can control. You might not have the resources right now, but there's no lack of resourcefulness. And if we focus on being resourceful during this time, we're going to be in a good place. All right, Dr. Sherry.
Number 5, you're going to put that up. So number 5 thing that we hear a lot of people say is my kids are driving me crazy.
Actually, I did number 5.
Did you do 5?
Yeah, I'm doing you got number 6.
Number 6. So again, this one, I don't think I've heard this one too much in the office, but I've heard a few comments on the outside world there, but certainly when you look at the way the food is being hoarded and everything, I think this is a big one for a lot of people. So I looked into this a little bit. It looks like, the food chain is completely fine in this. I talked to a couple of patients who work at grocery stores, a good friend who's a manager at a grocery store. This one you can rest at ease when you say, what is it true? And the answer is most likely not. Most grocery people say if everyone was just to back off for a week, they'd restock the shelves and we'd be back to normal. As long as everyone would just stop grabbing every single thing. Hey, side note on the grabbing of the food, by the way, it's kind of an interesting, and Dr. Osborne, I don't know, you might want to chime in. I think it's interesting to see the products that have been taken off the shelf and then the products that are being left on the shelf. It's kind of a statement, and I haven't quite come to a conclusion, so I don't know, maybe Dr. Osborne, you have, but looking at the items that have flown off the shelf and the things that are staying there, it is definitely telling a tale of either American sociology or health components or something. It's kind of an interesting, I don't know, Dr. Osborne, I don't know if you have a take on that or not.
Yeah, I will tell you this, is that what's actually kind of interesting to me, now I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't necessarily go to the store usually, but I am going to the store a lot more right now. And it's interesting for me to see people that are getting concerned about, catching a virus, and they have masks on and they look like the guy from South Park with hoods on and gloves on, and you look in their shopping cart and they're filled with pizzas and candies and alcohol and beer. They're literally shopping to do everything that they can to suppress their immune system. But what's interesting, a lot of those foods are comfort foods, and so we're trying to, when we're under stress, it lowers dopamine. And that dopamine actually is our satisfaction hormone. So when we feel restless, when we feel unsatisfied, we try to find things that raise our dopamine levels. And unfortunately, most of these foods will temporarily raise dopamine, which is our satisfaction hormone, but it quickly disappears. And so I think that what we want to look at is making our choices, not how we want to feel in the moment, but how we want to feel in a day, a week, a month from now. Like I said the other day, I talked to the guy at the liquor store next to me, and he said that, we're selling as much liquor as we do on New Year's Eve. And that's quite a bit. Dr. Sherry, and I messed up, we were talking, I did say, thought we had gone about the kids are driving me crazy. Do you want to cover that real quick?
Yeah, I want to say something real quick about the diet thing. So, it's interesting when we used to talk a lot about stress, and, your brain goes into a stress mode. And one of the things that's really, really not stressful for an animal is the act of eating. And basically it's wired. If you're eating, basically the nervous system says things must be pretty good, right? Like if you're a gazelle and you're out eating grass, that means nothing's chasing you. And so it's actually really relaxing for our brain. Our brain goes to what we call the tend and friend department, or the parasympathetic part, not the fight or flight, which is really healthy for us. So animals over time have learned the act of eating is actually very relaxing for us. That's why you invite people over for meals and dinner. It's when we're all relaxed and we interact. No one ever says come over for our family fight. You don't see that very often. But come over and have dinner and eat. Eating is very relaxing for us. So in a time of high stress like this, animals as we are, we're driven towards eating because it's a nice natural way to try to get your brain to go back to parasympathetic tone. Now you add to the fact that sugar will hit in your pleasure center, like cocaine or some of these drugs. The same area of your brain will light up when you eat these simple sugars. Here we are in a stressful situation. Your brain is driven towards eating because it's going to drive you into parasympathetic and make you more comfortable, kind of relieve that stress. And then boom, there's a simple sugar, which not only will drive you into a happy mode in your brain set, but it will then also give you this big hit of pleasure, of dopamine in your brain. And so, wow, it's almost impossible to ignore it. And when you look at the snacks, The sugary foods are off the charts. The chips are. These are all pleasure foods that force us into a happy mode and trigger that. And that is just not an unhealthy. It's just really an unhealthy way to eat. I think everyone knows about pleasure foods and everyone knows about eating when you're sad. And it's all brain chemistry. So I just want everyone to be aware of that when these times are going on. Stay strict and eat healthy, because most of those foods, by the way, drive your immune system down. They're not necessarily building up your immune system when you're eating those foods. What's the next one?
Oh, it's just the kids driving you crazy. Look, they probably are driving you crazy, that's probably true. Okay, the kids they're going crazy because they should be doing something else, and we know it's absolutely true. Yeah, well, they're not doing their homeschooling. They're getting on your nerves. But you're not really going crazy, and you're not really having a mental breakdown. And so be really careful about the words that you use to describe how you're experiencing life right now. You might, when you have that thought that they're driving you crazy, you're much more likely to lash out on them, feeling like you're the worst parent, worst homeschool teacher ever, which you probably were never a homeschool teacher before this. But if you had a different thought, you'd probably say to yourself, I wouldn't hold myself or my kids to such lofty expectations right now. I think we need to have a little bit more grace, and not just for them, but for yourself as they try to cope and you try to cope with this unprecedented situation. And so, instead of, a lot of times what we find when people are driving us crazy, we become very reactive. And, my daughter once told me, she said, "Dad, good dads remember what it was like when they were little boys. So now try putting yourself into their lives. They don't have the maturity that you have. They don't have all the experiences that you have. And I think that if we can, put ourselves in their situation, you'd probably realize they're actually going a little bit crazy themselves. And our job is to be parents at this time there. All right, number 7.
Number 7 is I can't get any healthy food. I think this goes a little bit with the one that we just talked about. This fear, if you look at it, I think there's more than enough healthy food. In fact, I see mostly unhealthy food flying off the shelves right now. Our stores are really stocked in veggies, fresh veggies, grocery. Now, they may not be all available every time I go in, but I don't think this is a fear that most of us should be having. I think it's actually fairly easy. And I think, again, the food stores are coming. Our good food store is locked up. I think we're doing fine. So I don't think we should be worried about this. My problem with this one is not necessarily I can't get any healthy food, but my fear for most of you is, are you eating the healthy food? Not that you can't get your hands on it. It's, are you getting it and are you making it? I find that one of the great challenges that we can do in a time like this is to have fun making healthy recipes. A lot of us are at home. A lot of us have time. Experiment. Go on, look at those healthy diets, look at those new menus, have fun, grab something different, and try different recipes and make different healthy foods right now. All the vegetables and all the fruits. It's a good time of year where there's a lot out there. Experiment with those, but be very careful, because I know there's a lot of people sitting at home eating really bad food, and it's not helping. It's hindering the problem.
Yeah, just really get motivated to seek out foods that are going to really fuel your body, and so you can have the energy you want, fuel your brain so you can think the way that you want, boost your immunity. So start thinking about the process of eating is either going to build you up or break you down during this time. And a lot of times when we get challenges, I just say get curious. Get curious on how you can, just be like, if you're having a hard time with it, just own breakfast. Or if you're having a hard time, just try to own lunch, own the minute before you try to own the millennia. Okay. Number 8. Now, this is the biggest automatic negative thought that people are probably having right now. You ready for it? I can't work out because my gym was closed. Now, I'll tell you one thing. A lot of us had gym memberships before this whole thing went down, and you weren't working out anyways, okay?
Hey, you see the funny thing? It said 87% of people don't even know their gym's closed.
No, I didn't know that, but that is funny, right? So
it's funny, but it's sad, right? A lot of people have gym memberships who haven't even been using them anyway. So that there's a lot of options that we can do, obviously, at home. So.
Yeah, and I think that there's actually no excuse. There's 2 challenges that I'm finding out with people right now. Some people just have a hard time working out by themselves. Okay. And then other people just don't know what to do. So number 1, if you don't know what to do, right now you can go to maxt3.com, and they're until this thing's over, they're opening it up. So anybody that wants to work out on with Max T3, the membership's free at this time, just to check it out. Dr. Doss is doing a fantastic job every single day. He's putting together workouts for you. Comment on them, share them. If you have questions, you can just contact him at, Dr. Doss, that's DOSS, drtjosborne.com, because sometimes we need an accountability partner. And so he's a great human being. And I would encourage you, if you're having challenges, contact him directly, and he'll be able to lift you up there.
And another thing on this really quick is, I'm going to jump in here a little bit, is, now's a good time, like you just said about the, experimenting with different recipes, and I mentioned it, and now's a good time to experiment with different workouts, right? Yeah. Different things, now's a good time. Do you remember when we were starting chiropractic college, how we had the discipline with Ron Overstein? Now's a good time to do a discipline. Take on a 30-day discipline as far as exercise, and Dr. Osborne will kind of explain here, but like take on something that you're going to say for the next 30 days, I'm going to do something exercise, whether it's walking every day or running every day or a challenge that you can do at home.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you have to understand, people say, well, I'm not disciplined, but discipline is a muscle. It's something that you work on and you build, you get it stronger. And so, a lot of times people say, well, they set these big, huge goals, but they don't know the steps to get there. They're like, I'm never going to eat sugar again. And then they eat sugar and they're like, see, I have no discipline. But what we need to be able to do is exercise discipline as a muscle. So I always say the first thing that you can discipline yourself is what time you get out of bed. You're going to have to get out of bed anyways. So you might as well set a time that you're going to get out of bed. Even if you get back into bed, at least if you get out of bed, you just did what you said you were going to do. And so I do think that it's the small little things that we do on a daily basis that led us to where we are in our life right now, and it will lead us to where we want to be. This is not a holding time. This is a growing time. And how we come out of this is going to be like a slingshot, or we're going to go back into our old dysfunctional patterns that, look, people say, I can't wait for this to get back to normal. I will tell you that after, almost 1 million patient encounters and, 25 years, a lot of people don't want to go back to normal. They weren't happy in the first place. They didn't have the health, the life, the vitality that they wanted. They didn't have the relationships. So don't use this as an excuse. You got it. Like I said, let's find a way. You're resourceful. You can do things. And so, is it true you can't work out because you don't have a gym? No. Is it, can I absolutely be sure it's true? No. There are so many ways that don't require a gym. And that by saying that is just an excuse, and you're lying to yourself. And think about how you react when you say that, because you basically are like, give yourself permission to feel like a weak couch potato with zero energy. And if you had a different thought that said, hey, look, I can figure this out. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to do one push-up. I'm going to do one squat. It doesn't matter. You're going to find yourself feeling stronger and more powerful. And you're going to find yourself getting more creative. And you're going to help to increase blood flow to your body and your brain. So it's going to boost your mood. It's going to boost your attention. It's going to really make you make better decisions, and not stress-based emotional decisions, but proactive decisions there.
I really love this one too, because I think this, at its very core, gives us an opportunity to really challenge what a lot of people say. There was a funny thing someone said the other day. They said, you said you would clean the house if you had more time. And we found out lie detector said that's not true. In other words, a lot of people have all this time, but they're not cleaning their house. I mean, this is an opportunity. There are millions of people who are at home who really don't have that much more time. They have a lot of time now. It's not like they're swamped. Now is a great time to set a goal workout-wise. Hey, when this thing's said and done in the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it works out, I'm going to come out of this thing stronger. I'm going to come out with less weight. I'm going to drop 5 pounds by the time this is over, and I'm going to launch myself into the gym. I can't wait for it to open, but I'm going to be ready. I think, human nature says, boy, I can't wait. We always think I can't wait for the next thing, right? Like, I can't wait for this to be over because, by golly, I'm going to the gym and I'm going to get in shape. And I think that's the wrong way to think of things like this. I think it's better to say, like Dr. Osborne just said, I'm going to start getting up in the morning at 6 and working out. And when this thing's over, I'm going to be in great shape. And then I'm going right back to the gym, and I'm going to take off at a new level, not waiting until, the very end, which I love this ant. What I don't like is the next ant, which is I need to drink alcohol to feel better. And this one actually scares me, because alcohol sales are actually up in our culture right now. And alcoholism is a big deal. We know from study after study that alcohol actually drives your immune system down. So it is not a good time, right? If you're looking for activities to do, the ones that make your immune system go down are the ones that you do not want to participate in. Eye stress drops your immune system. Toxin drops it down. Alcohol drops your immune system down. Alcohol is a depressant. Here we are in a very depressing time, a lot of fear, your nervous system's rattled. We're going to go to alcohol, which is the depressant and drives your immune system down. So clearly we should be trying to stay away from that because it's not going to help this situation. It's going to drive depression down and drive that immune system down. So when I look at that, is it a fear that I need to drink alcohol? The answer is no. You don't want to be on that right now at all. I think we try to avoid that as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, I think there's literally nothing good that can come from it. And the problem is that what it does is it just covers up problems there, and those same problems are still there tomorrow. All right, last ant number 10. You ready?
I'm totally ready.
I'm all alone and no one needs me. Well, and I think for me, this is in a time of social distancing, social isolation. You might be, is it true? You might be alone. Okay. But there's, and I know that's true. Yeah. You might be in isolation, but you're still needed by your family. You're still needed by your circle of friends. You're still needed by your colleagues. And I can guarantee you, they're probably feeling the same way you are right now. And so I think the challenge is when we have this thought, what it does is we start focusing on absence, or we start focusing on lack. We start focusing on what we don't have rather than what we do have. And there's an old saying that says that, depression is when it's the difference between what our expectation is of life and what our experience is of a life. And a lot of times when we focus on the lack, we actually, that divide becomes great. And so mental health issues are massive right now. And so what we need to do is really focus on what we do have there. And if we really change our thoughts there, what we would do is we'd say that, hey, look, no one needs me. But if we change the thought that people need me, and you would really be making more of an effort with people, and what we find is that when we focus on somebody other than ourselves, then what happens is that it's hard to be unhappy. It's hard to be depressed there. And so when we connect with people, it's going to make you happy. And so if you're struggling with anxiety or panic attacks or depression or other mental health issues, you're not alone. 45% of the people say the coronavirus has really impacted their health, specifically their mental health there. And just because you're sheltering at home, it doesn't mean that you have to wait for the pandemic to be over before seeking help. And in fact, during these times, your mental health is actually more important. That's the only thing right now that you have control over. It's more important than waiting to get than just waiting right now. So identify your mental health, connect with people, and I think that is, and just know that people need you. Look, we're here for you. If you guys need anything, we're sending, just call the office. We'll set up a time where we can do a video conference. And just really address any issues that you have, any things that you need help with there. Dr. Sherry and I have been, sometimes, 16, 18-hour days, just staying in contact with people and making sure that they remember that they are essential. Everybody's essential right now. Dr. Sherry.
Hey, Dr. Osborne, did you ever get time to read The 5 Love Languages, that book?
Yes, as a matter of fact.
That book is so great. I'd recommend it to anybody out there. If you got time to read a good book, The 5 Love Languages, I think it's by Chapman, I think is his last name. But in times like this, when I see us in isolation, basically there's looking at how people love other people. And one of them is physical touch. And then some of them are words of affirmation. And you can go through, when you look at your family members right now, trying to figure out, what their love language is. There are people literally who are the physical touch people who love hugs, who love just the people who wants to touch and be with you. Those people are starving out there. People with words of affirmation need to hear someone say something good about them. And those little things can go a huge way to helping your family. And if you, very nice if you know their love languages. We tend to have a primary and a secondary according to the book. But knowing those love languages, some people, the love language is gifts, and so getting them things or trying to send things to them is huge. It makes a huge difference in their mental capacity as we're going through this isolation period.
Yeah, and I think that I think we're right on track here, Dr. Sherry. And I think that we can give you a whole bunch of information, but I think what we find is essential number one is mindset. Like we have to make sure we deal with our mindset first, and if we can deal with our mindset, then what we can do is we can handle all the other information. And so I think the first question, if we want to roll into this, that we've really gotten from people is this. it's mask facts, right? Everybody's seen somebody with a mask. Either you're wearing one, either you're not wearing one. If I had, people are getting angry at people for not wearing masks. People are getting angry with people for wearing masks. Any thoughts on that, Dr. Shea?
The mask thing is interesting to me. I did a little research on it, and I think you have the 2 or 3 studies that we pulled up.
Yeah.
From what I can tell, obviously the N95 mask seems to make a big difference, but the cloth mask, if you look at the research on it, and I think you can pull it up. In fact, there's a study out of South Korea that was just published a couple of days ago, actually. Let me grab it. I just grabbed it. I wanted to. So April 6th of this year, South Korea just put a study up, and you guys can look it up. If you go on PubMed.gov, the effectiveness of surgical and cotton masks in blocking the COVID-2 virus compared in 4 patients. So basically what they did is they took 4 people that are positive for the virus, and they put the different mask on them, and they had them cough with the Petri dish in front of them. And what they found is, and you can pull this up, is they basically found that the cotton mask does not do a very good job at all. And in fact, the study says about 97% of things went right through that mask on the cough. And interestingly enough, there's some concern about the cotton mask as far as the moisture. They found a lot of the virus on the outside of the mask. They recommend not for health professionals to be wearing the cotton mask at all. And the surgical mask performed better on this study. And you can look it up and read the whole study for yourself. So I personally have not felt the need to have one on. That's my stand on it right now.
Right. Yeah. And so what I did is, and I'll post this onto the page for you guys, because I really think that a lot of times we do things, because we're part of the herd, right? We do what everybody else is doing. And sometimes we don't know why we do. And sometimes we don't know how to stay safe. And so we'll do anything that we possibly can, whether it makes sense or not. That's why we have our lucky rabbit's foot. I'm not quite sure a lucky rabbit's foot brings people luck. But there is that placebo effect there too. And so what I did is I just took a few studies here, and basically this was Journal of Clinical Infectious Disease, and it talks about. I just highlighted these. Basically, they found that that when they're working with people with acute respiratory infections, that disposable cotton masks aren't recommended, and single-use masks are preferable to cloth masks. So if you're wearing that same mask every single day, it really facilitates a lot of the pathogens, if you're not sterilizing it. So if you're trying to stay, concerned about viruses, you're concerned about bacteria, that might be something we really want to look at. Number 2, face masks for the prevention of infection in healthcare and community settings. And what I did is I just highlighted the use of reusable cloth masks, whichever you see everywhere, right? And this was done in Asia. There's really no clinical research to say that it actually even works. So everybody's concerned about, show me the research. Well, there's really no, according to this article in the British Medical Journal, it says that those cloth masks, they really don't do anything. And so the next one was looking at the effectiveness of surgical and cotton masks and blocking the SARS COVID-2 virus there. And this is only in 4 patients, but what they found was, let me go back up to this, sorry. I don't know why that's doing crazy stuff there, Dr. Shea.
That I don't know.
You don't know why it's doing crazy stuff? Let me go slower.
There's the stuff.
Slower. It's coming. They basically found that neither surgical or cotton masks effectively filtered SARS-CoV-2 during the coughs by an infected patient. I think that's what you were talking about.
Yep.
As far as the virus is just too small to be able to be stopped by the mask there. And so I think that we don't quite, and I think that is a really important thing. So yes, if it makes you feel better, wear it. But what we want to do is that, we want to take care of the things. It's not the outside world, it's the inside world. It's, your body, the cells of your body, just an extension of your environment. Masks for all COVID patients, not based on sound data. And so this was actually, from the Center for Infectious Disease. It basically said that they found the number of cloth layers needed to achieve acceptable efficiency actually makes it really difficult to breathe. And so, cloth masks is the PPE. They basically said, people that had cloth masks were 13 times more likely to experience influenza-like illnesses than those wearing medical masks. And so I think the big thing is we want to save the medical mask for the people that are in those high risk environments there. We'd start looking at this little, I don't know if you guys can see that, but if you look down, when we look at cloth masks, they basically don't protect against viruses whatsoever. They might do some bacteria there. Some of the sponge masks that actually look good, they actually do even less. And so what we want to do is, we want to do things that will have a really big impact on our bodies. And, so the last one I'm going to show you, glutathione and immunity and inflammation of the lungs. So what we want to really understand is that the COVID virus, it creates a cytokine storm, which creates inflammation in the lungs, which the inflammation damages the lungs there. And so glutathione is like your body's natural antioxidant. So when we're exposed to a tremendous amount of stresses there, our chemical stresses, our glutathione levels go down, which actually predisposes us to actually having a weakened ability to respond appropriately to the environment there. And so what we always say, it's not the virus or not the bacteria, but the host. And so what they find is that, like when they're looking at the people with like low glutathione, the mask actually will lower the glutathione levels. And we really want to find that we want to do things that are going to have a dramatic impact. Look at this. The mice infected with influenza showed pulmonary damage associated with dramatic decrease in pulmonary glutathione levels. So, we have the daily detox that we usually recommend to people. But the main thing is we want to really minimize the amount of toxins that we're exposed to on a regular basis there. So the question is that what about masks? Look, that's going to be a decision you're going to have to make. All I know is what the research is out there showing, that there's probably better strategies for you learning to being healthy, which would be washing your hands, which would be taking your vitamin D, which would be reducing inflammatory foods that create more inflammation in your body, avoiding toxins like alcohol, which deplete your glutathione levels because it puts a lot of stress on the liver there. That's why when they say that people that take like acetaminophen, they actually much more likely to actually get the COVID virus, because the acetaminophen will actually lower glutathione levels in your body there. So I think that's a major factor is that we have to, your health is not going to come from a mask. Your health is actually going to come from the things that you do.
Yeah. The thing on the mask, if people want to wear them, I'm right with you. I think they should wear them. It's fine. I have no problem with people wearing them. What I do think can be a little scary is when the thought process is I'm protected because I'm wearing the mask, or I'm somehow empowered because I'm going to protect everybody around me because I'm wearing the mask. The problem is the viruses are extremely tiny and they go right through those cotton products, no problem. I think what I'm hearing you say, and I agree with you, which is there's a lot of other things that are done that are get a lot more bang for your buck. Eating healthy, exercising, just getting out in nature boost your, from the University of Illinois did a great study showing when people get out into wilderness for 3 days, their immune system goes up 50%. You can find that on PubMed. You bring them back, that lasts 30 days, even 30 days later, they still had 25% more active killer cells than they did when they started the study 30 days later. Those type of things are empowering because your immune system is actually functioning better. I'm worried that people put the mask on with the belief that that is going to protect them, and then they go home and drink the alcohol, they eat the food, they watch TV and get stressed, and there's kind of this false sense. So I'm not saying you don't wear masks. You do it, I think, if you want, but I think there's a lot of other things that need to be done that are more important when you start looking at viruses, how absolutely tiny they are. And if we get time, we're going to talk about this virus being an enveloped virus, an RNA virus, and what that really means to it. I just don't want people hiding behind the mask thinking that, oh, good, I'm behind here, I'm safe, I got my glasses on, and nothing's going to get to me with a cotton mask on. You're not going to get that.
Yeah. All right. Number 2. And if you guys have more questions, you can always just post them on there. Next question. Let me pull this up. And it really is a twofold question here. Let me see if this goes. There we go. Is it safe for my kids to come in? And I think the question is not just safe for your kids, but safe for you. I mean, we know that your nervous system controls the function of your entire body. In fact, they talk about there's something called neuroimmunology, which means that you can't separate your nervous system from your immune system. And we know that when people get adjusted, it reduces their stress hormone levels. Stress hormones actually suppress your immune system. We also know that children are the people that are least at risk of having challenges there as far as their health there. So I don't know. What my feeling is this, is that we've done everything that we possibly can to stay in compliance and making sure that we have the tables washed with the CDC approved, cleaner there. Between patients, we're cleaning our hands. We have this, physical distancing here in the office, not letting more than 7 people in here at a time. And we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we minimize the risk. But I think sometimes when you come from a place of defense rather than a place of offense, I think offense is a lot more powerful. That's how we score points. We want to start really focusing on, knowing that when we work with somebody, reducing that stress level and doing the things that we can do, with the 5 essentials to boost your immune system. And I think that, why would we assume that this virus would be any different than anyone else out there, right? When we get a viral infection, mild or significant, our immune system remembers it and we have the ability to fight it for a lifetime. And so, there was just a study that was done by Stanford. I think they said that between 50 to 80 times more people have already had the virus and they just didn't even know it, right? And so when you get the measles, you don't get it again, even if your 3 kids get it, each year, and each year, and I think that's kind of an important thing. And so why would this virus be any different than any other virus in the history of man? The Smithsonian really put out an article which really agrees with my measles example. They use chickenpox, but they said that it seems that people who get the COVID-19 virus are unlikely to get it again. But they also leave the door open saying, but we just don't know yet. So we don't know 100%, but when we know how the immune system works, I think that's a really good place to start. And the example that they use is viruses for the common cold, saying, we don't hold immunity to them, and that's why we get so many colds. Well, the viruses that cause the common cold are just like the flu. They mutate constantly. I mean, there are literally millions of strains around us each day. And that's why, we've never had a flu vaccine that's 100% effective, because by the time they have a vaccine, it's the wrong seasonal flu. And why would we assume that it's going to be any different if we're putting all of our eggs in the vaccine basket there? So we don't lose our immunity. It's just that the strain changes there. And we do know that vaccines artificially stimulate antibodies, but we also know that they're reinforced by what we're seeing with the COVID-19 antibody test, that antibodies don't correlate to immunity. It just means that you've had exposure. And I think that rather than saying we don't know if this COVID-19 infection produces immunity, we should be saying that we have no reason to think that the COVID-19 infection doesn't produce an immunity. And that's just really how our body's designed to work, and that's how it's been working up to this point since the creation of man. So that's really my 2 cents. I do have a little chart here, and really if you look at this, we have 2 types of immunity. We have an adaptive immunity, and we have an innate immunity, and that's where inflammation comes on. It attacks anything in your body that's not you. But the adaptive immunity, there's 2 parts. There's what we call a natural, which is, we get it from our mom. It's very passive. And so when a baby's born, she gets the mother's immune system. And then you have an active immunity, which is you actually, when you're exposed to something, your body will actually create the antibodies, and you get this humoral immunity. It's, it's not really, like I said, it's supposed to be funny, but you have natural killer cells that create antibodies, which give you lifelong immunity. So just know that this is the process that has been keeping you alive up to this point. Like if you didn't have this natural immunity, you wouldn't be in existence right now. Now, man-made is artificial immunity. It's basically giving you trying to make you become immune to something. And the problem is that we literally have to inject it into you, because what it does is it has to bypass your natural immune system there. It's artificial, it's temporary. Yes, it says you have antibodies, but does that correlate with immunity? Not necessarily. Just because you have the antibodies doesn't mean that you're going to be immune for the rest of your life. And so really, I think our focus should be is that, we look at this adaptive immunity, focus on your natural immunity, the thing that's been there since time immemorial, since man's been on this planet, and focusing on doing things that we can do that won't interfere with it. Anything else, Dr. Sherry?
No, I agree. I mean, whether it's a personality thing for me, your comment about offense versus defense, I just find, looking at it like, hey, I'm going to go into a game or I'm going into war. I want to be as best shape I can be in. Things like not drinking the alcohol, getting away from stress, exercising, eating healthy, non-pesticide ridden, get organic food in us, do all those things that help our immune system function better. Listen, 8 hours of sleep does a tremendous amount for your immune system. I see people going, oh, I'm only sleeping 6 hours. Like, those last 2 hours are crucial for our health. Getting sleep, getting out in the park and walking, all of these things have been shown over and over and over to boost your immune system to fight this off. Instead of, the hiding and the cowering and being scared of this thing, being more proactive and going after it makes a way more sense, especially when we look at the numbers on who's passing away, people that are sick, people that have comorbidities, people who have pre-existing problems that are making their body weak and exposed to this. I can't agree with you more. I think we got to be more aggressive and get out and do things and not hide at the house and, eat bad food.
Yeah, there's an old saying that your body doesn't need any help, it just doesn't need interference, right? And so, unfortunately, many of our lifestyle things that we're doing actually interfere with our body's natural immunity. In fact, the head of the World Health Organization, I heard a quote, and I can't find the reference. So when I don't have a reference on it, I can't say it exactly. And so this is just from memory. But she said something to the effect that we have to vaccinate for this because we have a vaccine-based immunity on this planet now. And without the vaccines, we have no natural immunity left in a vast majority of our population. And to me, that was very scary. All right, next. Normally when I come in and I feel sick, I come in when I'm feeling sick, and you're telling me right now that, if I'm sick, I need to stay home. You want to take that one?
Yeah, I think the answer for us is we still want people to come in. What we've done in the office is we've created special times. So if you are indeed feeling sick, you need to call into the office and let them know you're having symptoms. We have special times, special rooms. We clean before, we clean after. So if you are sick, we definitely don't mind you coming in at all. We just make sure we're not bringing you in during normal times. We have special times. And maybe Dr. Osborne, you can maybe mention the hours specifically we have set up for that.
Yeah, and so they're after patients so that we can have time to clean and to protect ourselves. But what's also important is when somebody does come in, we're always making sure we're asking those questions as far as whether you have a fever, whether you have a cough, whether you have any of those things there. But we want to we want to be safe, but at the same time we want to be sane there too. And I think that. What we want to focus on right now is that, yes, we want to be protected. So we have two groups of people. With our patients that are immune compromised, and we see all types of people that are immune compromised, we need to protect them because we don't know. Nobody really knows right now. And so we want to make sure that they're protected. But at the same time, if you have questions, set up a video call with us and we'll go over where you're at. And, if you're dramatically exposed, quarantine might be the best thing for you because we don't know, if you're exposed, you don't need to go and give your grandma a massage tomorrow. But what we can do is talk about the plan to make sure that you're healthy. So it's that, and so we always hope for the best, but we also we have plans for the worst there. So yes, every case is individual. If somebody's, is expressing major symptoms, it's probably not the right time and place for them to be in the office, but there are certain things that we can do, but we do have specific times. So just call in and check in with the team.
Another thing on that really quick, so everyone knows who's watching. So the teleconference calls that we have now too. So, if you're at home, you're sick, or you haven't been in, and you want to come in, we'd love to have a teleconference call with you. We've done, I don't know, I've done a ton of those over the last week, where we can talk over the computer, check what you're doing, find out how you're doing with your home care, check on what you're doing, health, lifestyle weighings, give recommendations. That's another great tool that we've offered up since this has gone down, and Dr. Osborne led the charge on that, getting those out. So by all means, if you haven't been in touch with us in a while and you're hearing us now, get a hold of the office, set up a time. We'll do a teleconference call with you, a video conference, and we can sit and talk and kind of just touch base and see how things are going. We might make some changes to your home care. We might make some changes on what you're doing health-wise, but don't be shy. Get a hold of us.
Yeah, all you have to do is text 408-985-1111. Just the regular office number. Pull up your phone. Just text, hey, I want to set up a teleconference, and we'd love to talk to you. All right, let's go to the next one, Dr. Sherry. This is yours. Does contact with clothes transfer the virus?
Yeah, so I did a little looking on this. So there's a lot of different studies on this as far as how long this virus survives on different surfaces, temperature. So here's some good news, and I'm not going to go too far into this. I know we're getting a little low on time, but when you look at viruses, the reality of viruses are not living material. They're either a DNA strand or an RNA strand, and we won't go into that in detail. But viruses are either classified as DNA or RNA. And then from there, they're designed as either in an envelope or not in an envelope. And what that means is this virus wrapped in actual like lipid and protein that creates an envelope? And what that does, it allows the virus wrapped up in those cellular structures to pass through our body much easier. But the weak link to it is when it's got an envelope, and I'll let you know right now, this is an RNA virus that has an envelope on it. Those envelopes are made of protein and fat. They're very, very, very susceptible. They're weaker, actually, when they have an envelope around them. They're very, very susceptible to soap. They're very, very susceptible to temperature changes. They're very, very susceptible to pH changes, which is why the recommendations on washing your hands are so important, because this virus does not do well with soap. It strips off the outer coating and it ruins it right away. So on clothes, it can linger, but if you're not picking the virus up, touching your face and passing it into your system, it's going to be fine even if it's on the clothes. When you wash the clothes, it's going to be gone almost instantaneously. And one more thing, since I'm talking about this, the problem that we have with an RNA virus is if it's a DNA virus, it doesn't mutate very much. The RNA viruses mutate rapidly. They change very, very quickly, which is a little bit of a strength and a weakness. This is why we really don't have vaccines produced for RNA viruses, guys. So when you hear them talk about there's going to be a vaccine, there's going to be a vaccine. If you really read and you read about people who do vaccines, there's a big question, because we've never been very, very successful at making RNA virus vaccines because they mutate so fast. They change. The flu is a great example. So when you look at this virus, it most likely will mutate. But here's the good news. A lot of them will mutate themselves out of existence, basically. They'll change, they won't be as aggressive, and we might just see this thing dive away naturally. And if you look at the history of a lot of these viruses, that is what indeed happens. They break out, there's a big break of them, they're all over, it mutates down and it changes, and their mutations aren't always good for their survival. So we might see this thing mutate over the next few years, and it kind of may just disappear. So, it'll be interesting to see what they do with this. So keep that in mind. Soap, water, I know it doesn't survive well out in the sun. It gets warm in the sun and disappears, which is why they're letting everybody out in the open, letting you walk around and move out in our environment, because A, it's good for our health. We talked about that. But this virus does not survive. If you put it in a car with the sun, it is not going to survive in that environment. It is not that strong of a virus because it is an enveloped virus.
All right. This is one that's probably near and dear to all of your hearts right now, are home posture tips and tricks, right? So what we do know is that, look, we're doing things that we've never done before. Like most of us have never sat at our kitchen table for 8 hours a day. And so I think the main thing that we really want to look at is, especially with your spine, you're either regressing or you're progressing, right? You're either moving forward or you're moving backward. Either things are constructive that we're doing or they're destructive. And so, most of the physical stresses that we're under on a daily basis are destructive to us. How we sit, stand, and sleep. We're sitting on the couch. Most people are probably going to buy new couches at the end of this endeavor because they're spending so much time on there. And so what we do know is that posture is your window to your spine is your window to your nervous system is your window to how you adapt to the world, how you even perceive yourself in this environment, how you deal with stress, how every sensation that you have is through your nervous system. So when our postures are negative, they're going to have a negative neurologic impact and create a downward spiral of how we're going to adapt to the world. And so what we've done is, if you making sure that if you have questions on your work environment, make sure that you you contact us, and but the one thing I want you to make sure of is the number one thing that you could do is make sure that your head's not coming forward. Make sure it's not doing the text neck or the Zoom neck, right? Because that stretches your spinal cord and puts your body into an immediate state of stress there. Literally shutting off life flowing through your body at the optimal level and interfering with you being your very best you.
I tell you, I've been doing a lot of the EMG scans on people coming through. I've seen the majority of them are very, very active in the neck. And I think it's a result of us sitting at computers. I've heard over and over from people saying they don't have a good workstation at home. They're on like you said, they're on the couch on a laptop computer. So you guys got to do whatever you can to try to get those postures in the right spot. You can also take those wobble pads. If you have them at home, you can deflate them a little bit and sit on them. That'll add some motion while you're sitting. That's a great idea as well. But really get those monitors up. If your workstation is poor, I'd also recommend you take some breaks. Don't sit at that computer for hour upon hour. Take more breaks than you normally would, say, at the office.
Yeah, I think that the main thing is that we're sitting there for 8 hours. Studies show that you lose your effectiveness after about 20 minutes of sitting still. So take that moment, get up, stretch, go give your wife or husband a hug, give your kids a hug, and then go back to work there. All right, so let's go on to the next one here. What supplements should I take? And I'm sorry for the poor quality of this one. I don't know why it's so poor quality, but really I think that just from a supplemental perspective, your probiotics are incredibly important, and the reason being is that 80% of your immune system is actually found in your gut there. We talk about vitamin D is absolutely essential as far as us being able the things that we need to do. So we're looking at our vitamin C, which is a massive antioxidant. We look at Daily Defense and these are some of the product lines that we have, which is also a massive antioxidant. What we need to do is we need to reduce the inflammation. We need to take the oxidation. We need to take the inflammation out of our body, and we need to give our body the things that it needs to really start building itself up there. And I also think that, sometimes it's not the things that we start doing, but the things that we stop doing that are really important. And really one of the most common conditions in the United States is insulin resistance. So it's that high blood sugar, which is really going to really suppress our immune system. So you can't take enough supplements to be able to undo the damage from the lifestyle that we have. So first of all, I'm going to suggest that you cut out sugar. Sugar can lower your immune system by up to 60% for 4 hours after you eat it. Stop being sedentary. If they were to take all the benefits from an exercise and put it in a pill, it would be the best selling pill of all times. And they even talk about, exercise have even been shown people to help people recover from the flu. Stop tossing and turning, because poor sleep is one of the worst things that we can do, and it's a crisis right now. And poor sleep will have a dramatic impact on your immune system, and you can't take a pill to make up for the damage that's caused by poor sleep. So turn off Netflix at a certain time. You don't need to binge watch, Ozarks all the way through there. The other thing is, don't isolate. Make sure you're socializing. Make sure you're getting out, because loneliness will suppress your immune system. Cut out the negativity. Literally, the words that we're using, everybody's talking about, death and destruction and apocalypse. We can talk about love, life, health, and happiness, the things that build us up rather than breaking us down. Cutting the sitting time, because it's, sitting time is going to produce shallow breathing. Breathing is, if you're not breathing right, your cells are going to suffocate. And so I sent out a video, it's called, talking about box breathing. So working on your breathing, your breath work, meditation, be mindful of your breathing, because it's going to have a massive impact on your nervous system. Get adjusted. The adjustments will have an influence on your parasympathetic nervous system. And so, they've actually done studies where they look at people that primarily through what's called the vagus nerve, and, people that have immune issues, they're actually hooking electrical implants up to their vagus nerve to stimulate it, to be able to help them overcome their autoimmune diseases. Guess where your vagus nerve exits? Right here. So, so stop eating so often. Eating takes a lot of energy. So when you're eating multiple meals or you're grazing all day long, it's going to really increase, our insulin levels, which will lower our immune system there. Put the devices down. Too much screen time is, definitely been linked with depression, obesity, addiction. Play board games with your family. Go plant a garden. I think we're gonna have some of the most beautiful gardens this year than we've ever had. But basically, we really, the first thing that we do to supplement is really just what we're going to stop doing is to avoid things that raise insulin or raise our blood sugar at this point. So if you feel like you're in trouble, if you don't know where to start, just message us, call us, take a deep breath. We can sit down and put up a phone call there, but just laugh and move on in the right directions. So I think just know that there's no medication or vaccine or mask that can really trump a healthy lifestyle. And that's really what it comes down to, because healthy people don't get sick. You have to get sick. You have to be unhealthy before you get sick there. Sherry?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, the key, and we talked a minute ago about it, the key for me is being offensive and not defensive. The idea of hiding and acting like we're going to all avoid this. I think if you dive into the real studies, you dive into the real talk about this, I think they all know we're going to probably all get it at some point, or at least when I mean get it, I don't mean you're going to actually get it. We're probably all going to have an exposure to this thing at some point. I just want to be as healthy as I can when I come in grips with it and touch it. And I think you all should be too, doing everything we can to keep your body healthy, which ultimately is really what it's all about in life anyway, is being healthy. Because in reality, every day, I was reading a study that said every day we run into billions of viruses constantly all the time. Now, there happens to be one that's a little more rough out there right now, but in general, keeping your body healthy. And if you're not having a healthy lifestyle, now's the time to change it. And getting those supplements going and getting the right things in our body are really important to keep us as healthy as possible.
Yeah. All right. Next one. This is a question. When I talked to you at the beginning, what I know and what I don't know. I don't know anything about tonic water. Okay. I don't know anything about quinine. I don't know anything about it. But what I do know is that if you drink water, that will have a positive impact on your health. Okay. So let's focus on the things that we do know, that most people are dehydrated. Most people aren't drinking enough water, especially if you're drinking alcohol, you're going to be dehydrated. If fruit juices aren't water, sodas aren't water, coffee's not water. And so I really want you to really focus on the things that we do know, which is actually drinking water there.
The thing about water that I always tell people, which makes the most sense, and even back when I was coaching athletes and things, your body, the studies show that your body decreases mental capacity and physical capacity when we're about 2% dehydrated. The trick is our brain doesn't trigger thirst until you're about 3 or 4% dehydrated, which means if during the day there's any time where you're thinking, well, I think I'm thirsty, you're actually too late. So if you find yourself getting thirsty, you're too late on that water. We got to get more water in you. And the rule of thumb on water is you take your body weight, divide it in half. It gives you about the minimum of ounces you should have. So if you weigh 150 pounds, it's going to be about 78 ounces. You can get up to 150 ounces. Keep in mind, you're going to eat some. But it is one of the simplest things I think we can do, and it makes a massive difference on how our body works.
All right. Number 8. What are the real numbers for the virus? Dr. Sherry, are you the expert on this? Do you know?
I don't know if anyone's the expert when I look at these things. I think every day at night I go home and I lie down and I start reading as many experts as I can. And I agree that until we get testing, the problem with the testing, not to kind of burst the bubble here, but false positives and false negatives give us a problem constantly with these. I heard a number up to 30% of false positives on these tests. I think until we can figure out how many people actually have antibodies and are exposed, I think we're shooting in the dark. I think that we need to just continue to look at this thing. I do agree that the reality of us staying in was trying to flatten out that curve, meaning this virus seems to be more viral, and it means it passes quicker to people than others. And so the problem was if 1 million people are going to get this, the goal was not to have 1 million people get it in 4 weeks. The goal was to try to spread this out. The goal was really in the beginning never to drop the amount of people that get this thing, because we don't think we can. The real goal was to try to take that 1 million people and spread it out so our healthcare system doesn't get totally waxed by it. So I think, and I agree with most of the experts, like for instance, Sweden is doing this thing totally different. Are they right by not doing everything that the isolation thing? We don't know. I think we're going to look back and see these numbers dramatically different. Give it a year or two until we can really get an eyeball on this thing and look. I think the numbers are up in the air, to be honest with you. I don't think I see them. They're all over the board. What do you think?
Well, I don't think the government's going to call me tomorrow and ask for my numbers. I don't think like President Trump's to be like, hey, Dr. Osborne, what do you think of the numbers there? I don't think anybody really knows, and I don't think we have the data out there. We're definitely going to have hindsight on this, but like we've had in every other epidemic. But what we do know is that pretty much every time that they say a number, it's been wrong. Okay. The number of people that are dying, the number of, people that actually have had it, when the disease, when it started there. And so I think a lot of times people are getting wrapped up in the numbers. And really the numbers really have no meaning to one individual person. If somebody passes away, that they were a number and it was important to them. And so what we want to focus on right now, we want to focus on what we do know. And what we do know is that we have the ability to do things that will have a dramatic impact on our health and our well-being and our resistance. So you are the real number. And don't forget that you are the real number, and it's your choices and the number of things that you do right that build your body and the number of things that you stop doing that break your body down. And if you focus on those numbers rather than the numbers that are out there, I think that you're going to be in a much better place there.
Yep. Number 9.
Number 9 there. There we go.
You got it. Number 9. What are antibodies, and can people with antibodies still spread the virus? So antibodies, for those of you that hear that and see that, is how the immune system responds to bacteria and viruses. We create antibodies which are designed to go and attack these things. The test well, there's actually 2 tests that are being done out there. One of them is the test to see if you actually have the virus. In other words, are you infected and are you active now? The next test that we're really looking for is the antibody test, which we're starting to get out there. That's what I mentioned, that oftentimes at least I've heard up to about a 30% false negative rate on it, false positive. So We'll find out as we know more. But antibodies are a way, basically it's like the shadow of the virus or the bacteria. Once the virus goes through, the body produces antibodies to go fight these things and kill them. You can look into someone's blood, and if they have the antibodies, then you know they've been exposed. That doesn't mean they got the disease. It doesn't mean they had an infection. It means they were exposed. The immune system created antibodies, fought it away, and it went away. And they are no longer contagious. They're not going to give you anything with antibodies, and it's called seropositive. You'll see a lot of these tests being done. I know a lot of people are hoping that they get tested and they already are positive with the antibodies, in which case we don't believe you can get it a second time. Although this is where the mutations come in with the DNA and the RNA viruses. They change, and we can, if the virus changes, if it mutates enough at the RNA level, the antibodies don't recognize it anymore, and that's where you get those secondary infections. So again, the numbers are up in the air. We're not 100% sure yet.
Well, I think that the interesting thing though is that you have heard a lot about people that are actually carriers, right? And I think what's interesting is that what they do know about people that get, the typical vaccines, there is something called viral shedding, which they are carriers, meaning that they're shedding that virus after they get the vaccine. And we don't quarantine those people. We don't quarantine those people because we look at it as part of building herd immunity. And I think that's where I kind of want to, there's 2 last questions that we got, why don't some people get sick? And number 2, Dr. Sherry, is what is herd immunity? And I think those are the last 2 questions that I think that we really need to hit on there. And I think that the question is why don't people get sick? Well,
yeah, I think this question kind of has been answered through this whole thing, right? The people who the terrain theory says, if my body is in a defensive mode and there's no room for this virus to go in, my body fights it off, my immune system is active and aggressive, I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to, and one of the words I want to share with you guys is when you listen to the media, words have meaning. That's the whole deal with law, the whole deal with media marketing. When they start talking about millions of people are going to get this, I don't like that word. Millions of people could be exposed to it, but getting it means you have symptoms and you're sick. Millions of people are going to be exposed to this. It's going to go in. They're going to make antibodies. They'll never even know that it existed, and it's gone right past. They're not getting it. They just got exposed and made antibodies. And then, the next question in my mind is, why do those people don't get sick? It's because the terrain isn't right. You can throw seeds on a desert where there's no water and it ain't going to grow. And if you make your body into that by making it strong and powerful, you can get exposed and you're not going to get sick. Again, you look at the studies, the comorbidity, the people with weak, the people with immune systems, they're the ones getting ambushed by this and taken down. So I prefer the offensive approach, get out, exercise, water, all the things we've talked about.
Yeah. And I think that the main thing is this, is that when the lockdown ends, the virus is still going to be out there, right? And the problem is that we're going to have all these people coming out of lockdown that still don't have antibodies, and basically means that they'll just get it later.
Yeah, the second wave, everyone agrees is going to happen for sure. That's
well, the second wave is going to come, and then we'll have a third wave and the fourth wave until everybody gets exposed to it and they have enough antibodies. And so our focus right now is to build your immune system so you become strong, so that you're like those 50 to 80 times more people that had it that didn't even know that they had it there, and really focusing on getting people healthy there. And really, the more people that actually get it, have the antibodies, have the resistance to it, they create what they call roadblocks, which means that the more people that don't have that have already had it, it basically slows down their transmission there. And that's why you typically see that curve flatten out. So we have an artificial flattening because we're not letting anybody out. So typically, this is really the first time in a quarantine used to be for sick people, not healthy people. We used to let the healthy people out in the environment to be able to lower the load to the sick people when they kind of came out. Unfortunately, now what we've done is we've kept the healthy people away. So now they're still going. You're going to see the curve go up there. And I guess it's interesting. We're the only state right now that really doesn't have a date for opening up, right? And so maybe the virus works differently in California. But I think the main thing is that we have no idea what's going to happen. We just got to make sure that we start working on our normal life right now. And so basically the whole goal right now is that to wait till we have this max vaccination campaign. And if you think about, remember the anthrax with the military soldiers, I think there was 85,000 soldiers that were disabled because of that had massive reactions to it. And so we've never really had a vaccine that actually, this thing's going to mutate before the vaccine gets there. And so, my concern is obviously that, that if we're putting all of our eggs in one basket, we're putting all of our eggs in something that we don't know. What we do know is that you do have the ability to be healthy. And so we want to, we want to remind you that you do have an immune system. And that your immune system was perfectly designed to really fight that off. And, I think the Dr. Fauci basically said this, is that, the virus has a mortality rate of less than 1%. And I think we have to remember that he keeps on repeating that. We keep on seeing it time and time again. That's less than 1% of people that are actually infected, not less than 1% of the population. We're not going to lose 36 million people here in the country there. But what we do need is we need a different plan. And that's what we're, you keep hearing Newsom talk about is we got to have a plan. We're going to stick to our plan. We have a 3-step plan. Well, why don't you have a plan for your health? And that's really what tonight was about, was to just remind you that you are brilliant and powerful. And and I think really that's the big key that we want to hit tonight.
And hey, I just want to end. The last thing I want to remind you guys is take the opportunity, right? It's always the silver lining. It's a bad situation. Take the silver lining. What can you do health-wise? What can you come out of this with? Whether it's you've learned something new, you've started a new health program, you've changed your diet process. What are you going to come out of this with saying, I went through it, but I came out at the other end better because I'm taking care of my health. I changed my diet. I changed my exercise. I'm getting out and more, you're changing your habits. All those 5 essential things that we talk about all the time. Set that goal, do the discipline, do it every day, and make it happen. I think that, I'm looking forward to hearing as we get everybody in and start talking again, all the good stuff that came out of this, not all the negative stuff that we're being swamped with. So.
Yeah. And so I just, I think as we come down to this, really comes down to what's your process, right? Your nervous system is important. Your nutrition is important. Your mindset is important. Oxygen. And sometimes it's the absence of doing these things. So score yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. How well are you nailing it? Right. And I just want to kind of leave you, with a thought there that, the question is, are we really afraid of dying? Right. Because I went for a walk during my lunch hour and, I view that walk as essential. As a matter of fact, I view all of my life as essential. My nap, like every day at lunch, I take a nap. That's essential. Teaching people how to stay well is essential. Eating right, exercising, taking showers are essential. But what is very essential in all of our lives is a sense of purpose. And this is where what I'm finding is that we've lost our purpose. And many times people gave ourselves, our work was our purpose, but your sense of purpose when that work becomes lost, who you are, why you exist. And, I think that is a really important thing to remember. So if we're putting all of our energy into what we're not, what we don't want, right? That's what we attract into our life. So if our whole time, if all of our energy is put into the fact that we're afraid of dying, that's what I'm hearing from a lot of people, why they're not taking action. It's really, it's what we call Betty White syndrome, right? So that's why we have this, the social distancing. And so as I walk around, San Jose, and what I see is that people seem to be afraid of living. And that's what I'm going to challenge you to do. It's the exact opposite. Is don't focus on what you don't have. Don't focus on what you don't want. Focus on what you do want. And that's going to be much more motivational, and you can actually do something. It's the exact opposite. And I think my question to you is, are you more afraid of dying than actually doing what it takes to live? And if you stop doing all the things that you love to do, if you stop living, my conclusion is that you're really afraid of living because you think that you're actually going to kill somebody else. If you seriously believe that, then what we need to do is just go to the police station and tell them that, right? Start living. And what we can do is we just want to start living again. You're not under house arrest. You're not locked in a cell. You can actually take responsibility, and that's my message to you. Yes, people are going to die from COVID. People are going to die from heart disease. People are going to die from cancer. People are going to die from diabetes. People are going to die from car accidents. People are going to die from suicide. People are going to die because life is a terminal event from the moment we're born. But my argument is that many of the people that are dying from COVID are already sick, and they very likely would be dying in the next weeks or months coming there. And so when the economy is going to open up, some people will continue to die. That's just not a newsflash. It's just common sense. And death is not a new thing, and it's been happening since the beginning of time. But I want you to live. I don't want you to hide. We all know, our favorite Hollywood movies that involve somebody that puts their life on the line. And what I do know is that, we don't need you to be a hero, but what I want you to do is be heroic in actually doing what it takes to actually live at this time. You're born to interact. Start interacting, communicating with people, talking with people before it's too late. We don't want this world to go into a place of social isolation and life isolation and losing our purpose there. Any closing thoughts, Dr. Sherry?
Yeah, I just, as we close, I just want to remind you guys, keep in mind, there's a lot of people out there who are alone. Suicides are getting higher. I've had to deal with 2 of them here just in the last couple of weeks. So keep an eye on other people. At-risk people definitely need to be, taken care of, protect them, hide them, keep them away from them for a while. But pick some goals. Let's not hide. Don't be overwhelmed by the negativity and the fear out there. Let's move forward bravely. Get out, exercise, get out, move, and let's get through this. I'm looking forward to talking to everybody as you're coming back through. For some of you I haven't seen a little bit. We're here. We're still adjusting. We're having a great time. It's all about health, and I'm looking forward to talking to everybody. Again, remember, if you haven't seen us in a little while, reach out, because we want time to talk one-on-one with you and figure out what's happening with your health and get an update on you. So in health, thanks, guys. That was a great time.
All right, guys. Have a great night. Thanks for spending time with us, and we'll talk to you soon.